What's up? I'm Michael from Brooklyn Pasta Lab, and this week we made pasta for over 85 restaurants in New York City. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to figure out the hydration for different pasta doughs. All right, so hydration is super important for pasta, especially specifically for extruded pastas, because if you go too low of a hydration, you could damage the machine. The pasta won't come out right. But really, you could damage the machine. So it's a big thing to focus on. So really quick, basically the way it works is the flour is always at 100% flour. And then for your hydration, for example, we're doing a water-based dough for extruded pastas. We would do 30% water. Okay, so how do you figure it out? So let's say we're doing very simple terms. If we're doing 10,000 grams of flour, we're gonna do 3,000 grams of water. And basically, you just type into your calculator 0.3 times 10,000, and that'll give you 30% of 10,000. So that's how you would figure out how much 30% hydration dough is. If you want to figure out, for example, 29%, same thing. 10,000 times 29%, which is also 10,000 times 0.29. So you would do 10,000 flour, and then it would give you 2,900 grams of water. Now, sometimes if you are mixing flour and water just in one container, and let's say you have the container on the scale, you put your flour in, you get 10,000, and then you start pouring your water in there to measure it. Ideally, you measure it separately, but let's just say, you know, hypothetically, you measure it into that container, and let's say you went over. Let's say you did, we did 10,000 flour, and you poured in 4,800 grams of water. Now you'll need to add more flour into there because that'll be too wet of a dough. So how do you figure out, if you want to stick to the 30% hydration, how do you figure out and solve this mistake that you made? So what you'll do is, instead of doing 10,000 times 30%, which is 3,000, you do 4,800, which is the water, divided by 30%. And that equals 100 divided by 30% equals 16,000. So you need to add 6,000 of flour to fix your mistake. Sometimes it happens, if you're rushing or something like that, but ideally you measure it all separately. But if you're working with smaller machines, sometimes it's easy to just pour the water in there. And if you do measure too much, you know what to do. Instead of multiplying the percent by the flour, you take the water and divide it by the percent. So in that case, you would add 6,000 grams. So that's a quick little tip. for, fixing that little mistake if that happens. And the reason why I talk about this is because percentages are super important with hydration. Even 1% difference can change the texture of the dough. Um, it could extrude and becomes too sticky, um, or it could be too dry and super rough on the outside. So it's really important to just nail your hydration. And, during the summertime, it could be one number just because of the humidity in the air, especially here in New York. And then in the winter, it's a bit drier in the air. So we adjust for that. We'll add a little bit more water. So that's basically how you figure out percentages of hydration. Same way bakers do it for baking bread. And hope this was helpful. If you want to learn more about fresh pasta and meet some other fresh pasta makers from around the world, we have a community online. You could check out the link in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.